Things can go from adorable to horror quickly when you see your family dog grabbing your 17-month-old baby. This was Sophie Taylor's shock when she walked into her living room to find this terrifying sight. As she swiftly moved towards the scene to rescue her precious daughter from her loving dog, which she now dreaded anyway, Sophie realized that her dog had an extraordinary reason for acting in such a strange way. Hold on to your screen. This is the story of two family members trying to win a battle for survival. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. When Sophie's daughter and her dog met for the first time, the atmosphere was filled with that cute spark of genuine friendship. She could tell they would be best of friends, and they truly were. So fast forward to months later, this mother would never imagine that her sleek and adorable Doberman would act towards her baby in such a violent way. The situation quickly got out of hand, and beyond expectations, Sophie was in awe. Even though more than a dozen things were going through her mind at that moment, still she couldn't help but blame herself for trusting in her dog's passive personality and believing that was all there is to him. The new parents believed that growing with a dog will teach their daughter a sense of responsibility, bravery, and even help her be free-spirited while still enjoying the protection that a dog gives to their family, and this was their focus. On their visit to the rescue shelter, Sophie found this Doberman, and she felt her heart melt away. He stole it. Max's charming, affectionate, and family-friendly personality made it so easy for Sophie to forget about all warnings and advice given to her about his disturbing past. She was well aware of his possibilities of being unstable, but this double new mom was willing to take the risk of having him in her home. After all, love conquers all. She was enjoying Max's company in the yard as they played together like they usually do. Sophie and her husband were still there to observe, and this time something seemed off. However, since Sophie was already comfortable with Max being a member of the family, and she hasn't noticed anything unstable or unusual about him yet, Sophie didn't stop Emma and Max from playing their game, but she continued to watch over them. Slowly, the tension in the atmosphere was relieved as Sophie's thoughts now focused on how Max's new friendship with Emma can provide healing for him from his disturbing past experiences. But she was suddenly caught in her optimistic thoughts when Max did the unbelievable. He grabbed the baby and slammed her on the floor. For almost 30 seconds, Sophie was petrified. While still in shock and focusing on Khan's actions, Sophie got a new insight into the situation. It suddenly looked like his aggression wasn't on Emma, but something on the floor around her. Even though Sophie couldn't see anything, and at that moment, she thought, "Is this what the doctors warned me about?" Max didn't look like he was going to stop anytime soon. He kept pushing Emma around in an attempt to grasp what no one else could see. Meanwhile, neighbors who witnessed the scene were frightened and worried about how things would end for this new family. When Sophie could think clearly and saw that Max's aggressiveness wasn't towards her baby, she came out of that shock, swiftly moved towards the both of them herself, and carried her baby up from the floor. Immediately after everyone was thrown into confusion, the newest member of her family, Max, suddenly started to wail in agony while rolling on the floor. This drastic change in his attitude left everyone surprised and gave them barely a second to rejoice that Emma was now safe from harm. Now that Sophie had her baby in her arms, she was examining her to check if she had suffered any injuries from the incident with Max. Emma was fine, not even a scratch, which made it really clear that Max wasn't trying to hurt her. Max was not doing good. Now Sophie had a new cause for alarm. Sophie figured that something had either bitten or stung Max, and he was trying to save baby Emma from it. She fell in love with her hero dog all over again, and she was going to do everything she could to see that he was alive and well. This newest addition to their family is doing exactly what Sophie thought he would: be loyal and try to protect the family. In such a short period, Max was already battling an unknown dangerous creature to protect his baby without thinking twice or giving into his fears, and Sophie decided she was going to be brave about seeing Max as well again. In the blink of an eye, the violent dog everyone had feared now became the dog everyone was talking about for putting his life on the line for his family. She got to the hospital, And while the doctor was examining Max and trying to treat him, he made conversations with Sophie. The vet commended her for acting swiftly to get Max to the hospital quickly and ensuring that he was urgently attended to. The vet confirmed it was poison and started to administer treatment immediately. Sophie's husband also called her at this time to know how things were going, but she couldn't find the words to explain. The tears that had welled up in her eyes were now ready to drop. As her husband was trying to comfort her, one of the vets came out of the room, and Sophie asked what the situation was. He didn't look like he was bearing any good news. When he answered, he made it clear that Max was alive, but didn't know for how long or how well, but they were doing all they could to stabilize him, and they would love to wait to see how he responds. Sophie called in sick at work to devote this new day to Max. Her husband left for work while she and baby Emma set out to the hospital to check on Max. As they got to the hospital, they went to the reception, and the nurses asked them to wait for a while to check in with the doctors. In about 10 minutes, they had an appointment and were called in to see the vet treating Max yesterday. It was time for the doctor to speak, and he started by saying that everyone should be thankful for baby Emma. She was so lucky and blessed to have had Max around her at that exact time. The threat crept into the backyard and came for both of them, but Max wasn't going to let this creature get it without a fight. This animal we're about to discover had been living in Taylor's backyard without rent for months. Emma would have been the one poisoned if not for Max, and the poison would have had a more dangerous effect on her. So, Max saved the day. He saved a baby and a beautiful family from a considerable amount of pain and agony. From experience, they invited 2 experts to examine which animal poison was found in Max. They called in a reptile expert and a sting expert. The reptile expert confirmed this was a bite from one of the most lethal snake species. From this, the vets gathered that Max wasn't aggressive but defensive. At the instant he sighted the snake moving on the grass at the backyard close to the spot he and baby Emma were playing, he quickly jumped over her, dragged and pulled her away from the spot, and then jumped back to fight the poisonous reptile. With his natural dog instinct, Max knew he had to protect his owners, and especially this little girl he was already fond of, so it didn't take him a second to think twice before swinging into action, even though he knew it was dangerous for him. Immediately after Sophie heard this, she called her husband to get snake catchers to find the culprit that wants to test the strength of her family. She was so shocked and terrified all over again that a very poisonous reptile could have bitten her daughter. As they waited for him to react favorably to treatment, Sophie got news from her husband at home that the snake catchers found the reptile, and it wasn't just any kind of snake. The snake that tried to harm Emma was a mulga, one of Australia's most poisonous and dangerous reptiles, and from the look of things, it had been living in the backyard for 4 months. Now that the situation seemed clearer and the doctors knew exactly what kind of snake had bitten him, they knew more clearly what actions to take. Hours later, the vets came out of Max's ward. He was alive and definitely on the road to complete recovery. Sophie was overwhelmed with joy. The doctors were pretty excited too, and Sophie called her husband immediately to share the good news. Since his full recovery was highly assured, Sophie was going to be allowed to take him back home while they came for regular checkups. The vets were very impressed at how Max fought through everything. At this point, everything was all starting to make sense and come together to Sophie. She was happy they could move forward as a healthy family. Family's home, the neighbors are happy, others are mowing their backyard more often, and some are considering getting a dog as well. This story became a popular one in their family-friendly neighborhood. Sophie had made up her mind to keep this Doberman for life. He's going to grow with them as they grow their family.